Hello, my name is Hezekiah Gabriel, and I'm the Executive Director of Pathways to Peace. Today, it's my honor and delight to introduce Dr. Jenna Darko. Jenna is an extraordinary human being, and she is gifted with enormous wisdom, compassion, kindness, and humility. Jenna listens to the call of our Mother Earth and hears and articulates the wisdom of the horses. Jenna embodies oneness consciousness. Pathways to Peace is so honored and delighted to support and promote Jenna's work. I invite you to open your mind and heart and to simply be present as Jenna shares her beautiful transmission. And now, without any further ado, I will turn the floor over to my beloved colleague, Dr. Jenna Darko. Jenna?
Thank you, Hezekiah. It is such an honor to be able to highlight how this connection between horses and humans is a pathway to peace. And I am in great joy to be able to make these offerings during the 7 days of rest that will help us explore how this connection between horses and humans bridges heaven and earth. So each day we will go into the theme with the focus on horses. So today we'll explore more about presence, the miracle of us being together. Tomorrow we'll go into resonance, where we'll look at the heartbeat, the hoofbeats, and the music of our souls. On day 3, the topic of radiance will give us a chance to see how it is when we are with horses in this expression together, that it expands our hearts. Then we'll go look at gratitude that we have for the essence of our coexistence with one another. We'll turn to the truth by exploring how, through a clear mind and an open heart, we can touch on this heart of the world, touch on what does it mean to know this heaven within, to experience heaven between us, and to know this great earth as the embodiment place of heaven itself now. And we will find then exploration of clarity and look at what it means to have true expression in our connections with one another. And then dive into kinship, knowing that heart to heart we are one as a human race and also as these inner species, and with particular focus on how the horse brings us heart to heart. So before we get into each daily theme, I will present now this transmission that came spontaneously for you to be able to start to have a glimpse of some of those different topic areas and learn a little bit about the journey that I have had with horses and some of the story and themes that I'll be bringing forward. And you'll note that we're going to explore both this mythological, symbolic, archetypal nature of horses, as they have been taught in sacred traditions all over the earth as representing spirit, consciousness, energy, freedom. And then also looking at the mundane, the nature of horses in a very practical sense, and how they guide us into tangible ways of looking at our practices here in connection with ourselves, in connection with them, and in connection or disrupted connection that we can heal with the whole planet herself. So enjoy the transmission, and we will catch you then for each of the daily themes. The most central and essential message is that the horses are a very powerful bridge, as many animals are, but the horses in a specific way are a bridge of heaven to earth through the heart. The way that their hooves are anchored into the core of the earth. But they do it in a way that's different than like the lions or the elephants. It's not quite as etheric as a deer. It's in between, where there's a strength and a rooting, but a lightness and a freedom and a speed that they can traverse the earth with that is of great importance to humanity right now. for us to do likewise and to feel of that within us. And they bridge the heavens in the sense of so many layers of the super consciousness that supports us, all the way to the highest, just pure white golden light that can be infused as a marriage of wisdom and love as we go about any step along our journey. So it's that bridge of heaven and earth through the heart, and how they open the heart of humankind through the power of their presence in the present moment, because they sit so awake and alive on that pulse of now, when they are at that relaxed alertness, where they are scanning and aware, but still they can move and they can hold timelessness so powerfully that is a part too of what they can invite us into. And it happens in a split second in some of the most ordinary ways of just a child or a person in sorrow, seeing a movement that they make and suddenly being in the now with them. That's heaven on earth right there in that slice. And it, I believe, also has been held in the records of our humanity for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, that they will be bringers of this big turning that is coming for our consciousness, to go literally from one place in our evolution as a human species into a quantum leap. I mean, becoming a new species within. It will be the kind of change, the scope of change that is upon us, and that they will be able to walk us into. And I say walk us into, in some ways, acknowledging that part of what they can help us with in a very practical sense, in addition to this heart knowing sense, is unwinding of the colonization and the imperialization that has traumatized and wounded and fragmented the world. That if we understand how to walk with one another, including at times them, on equal ground, rather than in positions of dominance or leveraging the power of being on their backs when the heart is not connected into that oneness of being together. If we can look at that as a humanity, they have power to help us unwind these wounds of force, control, dominance, aggression, war, unaligned ways of industry and agriculture that they have been co-opted into by us, forcing them, basically submitting them to our practices of travel and plowing the earth and tilling in ways that disrupt the biome, that disrupt the eco diversity of the soil, and all of these things. Like, they hold witnessing power of having been with us in all of these steps of advance, as we might say, that we have advanced and they have helped us advance, but we've done so in a way that has not been honest enough to be in harmony with the earth. And they can help us unwind that by showing us how we have erred in our relation with them. And if we can come into right relation with them, wholesome relationship with them, then we can still have all of these glories that we have with them, but we can do it with more honesty. Then we can heal the fractures that have been along our journey, from the things like the abundance and the greenness of the planet, the richness of the soil, and the truth of how it is to be connected essence to essence with any being, or even a non-sentient object. We can be in that connection with a vase. We can be in that connection with a house or auditorium that can hold us. And the horses have built all of these structures with us and are, I think, invested in helping us deconstruct a lot so that we can come from a new place of togetherness. And that it can happen in quantum time and quantum ways where the unwinding, I feel that they can help us bring, is so nonlinear, that it's just a quantum leap that they will help us step into. One of the horses who lived on Earth, and he departed about 1.5 years ago, and I knew him for about a year, who is holding a lot of wisdom for me, was born under the sign of Leo. So he is a Leonid being himself. And I have felt it was actually right around the time of his passing that Linda's book came into my life through a friend who was in a group where we were meditating and calling in the animals through mostly the connection with horses. And she had come across the Lion-Hearted Leadership Principles and then Linda's book and recommended it to me. And so I think that it is through this horse major that some of that wisdom of it's like where predator and prey meet with the lions and the horses, that there's something very sacred about the lion-hearted horses coming into the field to show the oneness of that cycle, and where humanity has split that off, and that if we can reunify our sense both as predator and prey on this planet in a way that honors that this is a planet where life is consumed for life, then we can reharmonize so much through them. So Major has stepped into the field to show me a lot of that, and stepped out of the plane of Earth in order for the mythology to be told in ways that bridge the living generation with the past and the future generations. So it's kind of nonlinear. It just sort of came out, with what it is. But his name is Major, which is a, major, like major in the army. And the human who took care of him for 11 years is a Mexican man named Marcial, which in English translates into marshal. So a marshal is also a title for war. And I see that these are streams that can come in, flipping it from the dominance kind of war into warriors of light, and helping us unwind these practices of colonization that the horses have been really literally roped into. And we can free up a lot by learning to come heart to heart versus using tools of force. And so the same thing, and that used to be a rope of force, can become a rope of connection with that turn of seeing one another essence to essence versus using the strength of another. So all of that is percolating. And I know Major is very connected in with the constellations that hold the grid for the white lions in Africa. He was a beautiful black horse himself, which is not a coincidence, or it coincides. It's intentional. So there's a lot that comes through for that. So I'll have to feel into this space where there is a openness for the white lions to be here and to speak with me and feel into that interconnection between the equines and the Leonid beings, and find what is most timely for this 7 days of rest offering. I'm just being shown like 2023 adds to 7. And so this number 7 is a 7 and a 5 are important. We kind of truncate it with 23 being a 5, that those are important pulses to be on right now of transformation, and then that wholeness of creation. So they're with us. And I will say too that one of the things that the horses our suffering in that desperate way of this is how humans are affecting us on the ground as mundane beings, does have to do with hunger and the gut and the biome of the gut and the soil and that cycle that they show us really clearly. I mean, that's all I do these days when I'm here caring for my horses. It's food in, food out, food in, manure out, composting, and taking the growth. And so for humans to be able to see that more clearly will be very important, because right now the practices of keeping horses, well, we've destroyed the soil by chemicals. So those chemicals are depleting their gut experience, both by less nutrition coming in and then the chemicals that they have to process. And then the practices for keeping are to the human's convenience, not to the natural rhythms of the horse's digestive system. So millions of horses are kept on schedules of being fed twice a day by people who don't understand that the earth feeds horses 16 to 18 hours a day when they're permitted to be free to nourish themselves how they are meant to be nourished. And so horses are suffering from a lot of gastric conditions and ulcers and these things, mine included, having a healing journey from that. And that they are wanting that suffering to be brought forward, not now, not in this space, but in part of my project and part of some of those overarching things, and where some of the advocates for horses' welfare come in, that's a big thing. But in this space, I'm bringing that up just to help us really see that connection of the soil and the green growth and all of us as mammals consuming plant matter and the sacredness of that and how the sunlight enlivens that with codes. And then we express it back out to the earth. And if we do that wisely, then it can fertilize everything and the cycle of life can be so glorious. And so the equine beings, the bovine beings, other farm animals are really here to help humanity reverse those ways that we've gotten so sideways and come into more harmony. And that our happiness starts with the gut and heart and brain connection. And so the horses really, really can bring us into that kind of awareness on a global scale fast, if we can bring this mythology through and then tangible places on the ground where people can gather with the horses and recalibrate. How do we nourish the soils, nourish ourselves? How do we understand ourselves together? And that real whole earth governance can, I think, be spurred on, by the horse kingdom. These horses that are in my life now and their mother, so these horses' mother, the one mare that I have now, who's her daughter, and this dog Mira, all three of them had leg bone injuries and ligament or tendon injuries that were nearly life-threatening, but we've worked through the healing of those things, and they all have had many, many years after the injuries to be able to thrive on the earth. And so these three really drastic bone injuries that these horses had meant that for me, when I was first a teenager, and then about 8 years ago, and then 5 years ago or so, I was finding myself with these horses and dogs that had these left rear bone and tendon injuries. And so it just spoke okay, this is a pattern. So we listen to patterns if we want to learn what's going on, tap into the meaning. It took me years to feel into this and have it be this pattern that unfolded, and then learn, well, what is this teaching me? So this mare here, who's just in the field right over my corner, over my shoulder, had a fractured leg, and it was about a year before she could return to pasture. And I had to walk all of these three animals for months, walking for their physical therapy rehab stuff to make sure that they could continue life. And all three of them, the first injury was this mother horse when I was a teenager, and it happened on Martin Luther King Day. And so that's a day when we mark importance of racial healing in America through the wounds of slavery, with Martin Luther King having stood as a wise soul to have this dream of equality and racial healing and us to be able to more than coexist, really be brothers and sisters on this planet. So it was Martin Luther King Day that this horse got injured. Another horse kicked her in the leg because there was some scarcity of food resources. And I was hundreds of feet away and my back was turned to the pastures, but I heard the impact of a steel horseshoe with cleats hit bone on my mare. And my back was turned, but I instantly knew, because I kind of had that flash of vision, like I saw it in the unseen, I saw it in vision, what had happened behind me. And so I knew that it was her bone being kicked that I heard, and it was. So I turned, and it was very, very cold. In that when sound travels, it travels like with more of a piercing nature in the cold, cold air. But winter is like that here. So it was a cold January day here. And I heard that, and it like rang through the airwaves and through the cells of my body with this piercing nature of her injury, but also it hit me. I was 14. It hit me as this life moment that would be with me as part of my purpose forever. And I knew I wouldn't understand it then, but that it was a bookmark of note this. And so I did. And I instantly knew, because I was home from school that day taking care of the horses because it was Martin Luther King Day. I knew that that date was of great importance, and that Dr. King and that whole racial trauma of humanity was embedded somehow in this moment of my horse getting kicked in pasture, but I had no idea how that would make sense. So years later, all of these things then happen. Every time one of these animals was injured, it was over that I was walking them over Martin Luther King Day in the cold of January, winter outside. So it kept speaking to me, but I still had no idea how to make sense of this until about 2 years ago. It was summer day and I was driving out to see my horses, and there was a radio program on, and there was a quote being discussed by anthropologist Margaret Mead, who was asked, how do we know civilization has come into groupings of humans? Like, what are the first signs of civilization that you uncover and you discover as an anthropologist to know humanity is here? And people thought it might be tools or shelter, gathering spaces. She said it was a broken leg bone that had healed, showed that human civilization was beginning in any place. Because in nature, if you have a broken leg, you will not survive. It requires someone to protect you, to help you have warmth, shelter, food, water. So all that provision and sheltering and care, one to another person says, I can help, steps forward and saves the life of one who would be rendered helpless to the point of not surviving, shows that we are our humanity. And so it hit me that that is what this leg injury stuff had been about, is calling me to understand that our signs of humanity are recorded in the bones. And in this way that I can bring that reality and mythology together through story, these equine and canine beings have shown themselves as proof that our humanity extends to the animal kingdom as well. That the records in these bones of these beings that I love show that they have had a broken bone, and someone who is human has extended that humanity to them. And that's part of the story, is how can we then heal the fractures of our humanity through understanding that what it means to be human is that we care for one another. We care for one another as humankind, and we can do better on this planet on whole of how we are caring for one another. And we care for all of our kin. And our kin care for us too. They might not have thumbs and build shelters and be able to store food in the ways that we can as humans, but the mythology is to show how they've always also been caring for humanity, for humankind to become what we are meant to be able to catalyze as our potential. It's been inborn forever, and it's always evolving. And we're on the cusp of a new iteration of that. And we will see them in more true light as bringers of our way all along if we look. And I just want to serve looking in the way that this mythology is asking me to look, so that I can bring these stories forward that blend the real life characters with the larger than life holding of the star beings, really, that transcend the earth plane, but hold it in its glory. It's in our bones. And the records, too, of the domestication of horses are in their leg bones. I just was learning this. When archaeologists look for the signs of when was the horse domesticated, they look at the change from their legs when they went from a three-toed, more dog-like mammal creature into the one-hoofed equine creature that we now have. They look at the leg bones to see that evolution of the species, and then they find the leg bones in different places on the earth, and they find evidence of domestication. And one of the first places that they find this evidence of domestication is in the bed of land where Russia and Ukraine meet, which is where right now we're at this tremendous war. And so that's really speaking to me a lot. And I have, in the last year since the bombings started happening there, been put in contact with a couple. They're horse people, they're musicians, and she is a rose gardener from a rose garden that she inherited from her grandfather. And I know too that they will be part of the story of how to understand where we are at right now, in these ways of human war, to unwind through the domestication and the power of the horse to help us do that. And they are in Odessa, which runs along the 31st East Meridian. It comes north through Giza, and actually it goes through Odessa. And you continue that north, it goes through Alaska. And I've got some, connections there too, which we won't go into today. But that place in Linda's book where she shows the graphs of that meridian running through, spoke very clearly to me about 1.5 years ago, around the time that Major passed, that was to be something I was to learn and to study and to meditate. And I wrote various points as I was looking at these different latitude and longitude lines that were coming through, and could see where they connect to characters that are real life people in the lives of me and these horses that can share some of these stories of the global web. And I didn't know anybody in Odessa, and I wrote Odessa in my journal, and I didn't know why. And then I went back and I looked, and I could see that the meridian runs right through there. And then within hours, a friend of mine who was in Ukraine with her husband through the United States Embassy work there, messaged people that they had returned home and that they were thinking of their friends back in Ukraine, and that this couple that has these horses needed some help and support. And so I connected with her through that. And I feel that it will be a powerful light, anchor point on the planet to rally some support for them, particularly as they are musicians, knowing that music can carry the teachings of resonance in some very powerful ways through the scripting. So something about bringing them in right now, knowing that they are on that 31st meridian, feels very important as well. So like I said, it's a lot, but I figured, well, just let some of these pieces be like popcorn and enter in here. And one of the main themes that keeps coming forward that the horses are showing regards consent, and how we have lost our way with understanding what consent is, human to human, human to other species, human to soil and earth and our practices. And if we, again, get really honest with ourselves, to listen, look, feel, and attune to what are the horses showing us about consent versus their inner no. They're walking away. They're turning away versus turning towards and connecting. We can see how we've lost track of the sensitivity as a species to listen and to look and to feel and to know. Is a being saying no, or is someone saying yes? Is there an invitation in? Is there a curiosity? Is there mutuality? Is there a connection? And so learning to recalibrate our senses to the process of true consent is huge for the healing of humanity. And again, it's one of those themes that the horses can help us walk into. So I was looking at some of the astrological significance of this week and various themes over the last year and time of my life. And I realized that during this period, we will come into a full moon, and it is full moon in Cancer, which is a sign of the waters and of emotion, and also of the body part of the breasts. And thinking of how for human relations, consent and the bosom, consent and the breast has been so violated. And this is new chance for us to learn to recalibrate, to come into that healing way, to be able to honor consent, honor touch, honor the body, honor the emotions that come with being in contact with one another. And so again, this is a thread of the horses having a lot of potential to show us how to walk in right relation with all of our kin by having that clarity of sensing through that essence to essence ask of, are we together on this or no? And then honoring the yes or the no. One other thing that I think, since we have record on, that I will also say is in these storylines with different people and different than people who become characters in this mythology. Another one who's really near and dear to me and to these particular horses is a man from Chihuahua, Mexico. So if you follow the latitude lines from Giza north to south, we've talked about some of the places on the earth that are important there. So if you follow the longitude line that runs north-south from Giza down to the Lion Territory, up through Ukraine, up through Russia, you come down the backside as you start to drop south on the planet through a place called Eagle River, Alaska, where there's some significance there. So that's one loop. If you run east-west on the latitude lines, you run through many territories where there's some exciting and important things. One that is of big human significance is that runs about through Wuhan, China, where we know that this viral disruption to show us that we've been out of harmony with the ecology of the earth is sending us a message. You keep following that line and you come right through Chihuahua, Mexico, where there's a dear friend of ours who's from there, who has been one who can listen to consent, both on the level of human and horse interactions and human to human interactions, and is a wonderful, warm soul friend of mine and of these horses, who is helping us also be able to tell a story to overcome these boundary lines that are drawn literally in the sand, in the desert space between America and Mexico. We have traversed many boundaries with horses as they have become new breeds and they have migrated and been imported. And so we have this worldwide love of diversity of the horses. If we can open our hearts, they can show us also the possibility for this worldwide love and friendship across national boundaries. Mm-hmm. And that boundary between Mexico and the US is where there's a lot of pain right now. But in my life and in the life of these horses, that boundary being transcended has brought us such joy of friendship and kindness and care and deep listening and love. And so that's one of the messages that is coming through, the real people also being part of the mythos in this Phoenix Rose journey.
Oh my goodness, Jenna, thank you so very much for that beautiful transmission, for your ability to be so articulate and clear with the wisdom that's flowing through you from the horses and through our beautiful Mother Earth. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. Pathways to Peace, again, is so honored to be able to support and promote your work And I am sure people watching this would like that opportunity as well. So let's look at how you might reach Dr. Jenna Darko. Here's her contact information. And I know she would love to hear from you. From all of us at Pathways to Peace, thank you for your presence, and thank you for listening, and thank you for following your heart in these 7 days of rest and beyond. Thank you.